Well, hello there. Say, do you like death metal? Yeah, you do. You like death metal, don't you? In which case, I got something to show you. Trapped inside. No one seems to care. Hi everyone, I'm back. I'm going to review Wretched Inferno's new LP, full length, called Decayed, Butchery, released today, September 24th, independently, and yeah. So I reviewed their EP called Fester, and I thought it was impressively good, especially for a fledgling band made up of members that are very young. And I was really looking forward to seeing how they'd follow that up. And surprise, their full length is here. So, first impressions. This album is disgusting. They have the most just repulsive guitar tone I've ever heard. It's awesome. And like, oh man, but they have this thunderous, like, just beefy low end with just gigantic production. And it doesn't sound washed out or muffled really at all. But it also doesn't sound digital or new age or corey or anything like that. It doesn't sound like fake heavy either, which is really impressive. Especially for a home mix, like, this is incredible sounding stuff. My only complaint is that at times the vocals can sound a little too prominent. That's all. Like, other than that, it sounds amazing. They've also improved on the complaints that I had on their EP, which were fairly nitpicky, but they included, I thought the kick drum sounded a little clicky on the EP, and I thought the vocals were a little one note, I suppose, and their guitar leads weren't very good, and the riffs weren't varied enough, essentially. All of that is better. All of it. Like, I know they watched my review because I told them about it and I sent it to them and all that stuff, and I had them preview it and stuff. They definitely watched my review, and it seems like they took my not complaints, but my nitpicky gripes into consideration, and have improved on all of that. Noticeably, they have a little bit of a brutal death metal, sanguisugabog kind of like bongy snare thing going on, but it's not nearly as intrusive as it is with sanguisugabog or other brutal death metal records. I'm not a huge fan of brutal death metal in general, and I'll talk about that a little bit more, but in this case, it's not nearly as prominent, and the snare fits well into the mix, and it is not like constantly in your ear, and so it actually fits really well. Additionally, Cullen's vocals have improved. He's doing different sounding growls now. He's hitting even lower tones and doing guttural stuff as well, which is super cool. His mids sound better, and so do his lows. He's doing he also does two sort of types of lows. He's got like a low pitch that he'll like stick on, and then he's got like an even lower pitch that he uses as like a special move. The riffs on this album are much more interesting and very diverse They've got a lot of varied riffs, and they go back and forth and to and fro between different types and different styles and different speeds of riffs. And it's actually both technically impressive and fun to listen to, and it means that it doesn't get boring, or it means that this doesn't get tedious at all. So this album has elements of brutal death metal, death doom, even gore grind, and none of it is out of place or feels derivative at all, or even turns me off really that much. I was when I heard that this record was going to be more brutal and just more like that, I was a little afraid, because I personally am not a huge fan of a lot of brutal death metal stuff. I think it gets really, really tedious really fast. But this does not. They managed to avoid that entirely. And it's like compliments to them. Like, great job. Alright, so let's get into the tracks. The album starts off with Grinding Up Viscera, which includes a sample about Jeffrey Dahmer and his collection of body parts, which is totally brutal. And it's awesome. It leads straight into the first track, Sutured Monstrosity, which is sick. Like, this track starts off with a blast and a nasty riff. There's a palm-muted riff, and it gives way to some nasty chugs. There's some fun syncopated stops and starts, and they actually, like, stay in time and, like, keep up, which is super cool. Sometimes death metal bands try and do that, and they just lose track of what they're doing. There's a trem-picked riff over a blast, taking off into a sprint, before it just hits the brakes, and it goes into like a mid-paced chug, and then like a nasty breakdown, and then and Colin's low vocals on this sound just better than ever, just disgusting. I love it. The second track, Lake of Moldering Pus, starts off fast, goes in with a nasty blast and a few trempic riffs, different stuff going down. There's some awesome high vocals from Will, actually. This is a duo vocalist band. 2 of the 3 members do vocals, which is super cool. I made that mistake on the EP review, and they had to correct me, and I felt stupid. There's a brutal death metal style breakdown with some pinch harmonics and some guttural lows from Colin. It's just disgusting. And then the blast comes back, and they just like take off, and then they break down again, and they stop, and it's like, oh man. There's mid growls over a blast, and then like a half note stomp that finishes out this track, and it's just great. Erupting Putrefaction has some mid-paced riffs with some pinch harmonics, and then an up-tempo sort of gallop. Then it slows down into a doomy section and then like a nasty, just doomy chug, and then it takes off again with some friggin' great drumming from Will. And this track, I mean, the first 3 real songs are just fantastic. Like, it's just great. I'm loving it. The next track, Crawling from Flesh, is like crushingly slow death doom, and they've got like gore grind, like early Carcass, like fucking pitch shift vocals, and that might sound cringe to you, but it really isn't. Like, I don't listen to gore grind like at all. I think it's just too ridiculous for me. I think a lot of the derivative sort of gore grind bands will pitch shift their vocals to the point where it's just comedic. With this, like, they pitch shift their vocals, but it's not ridiculous sounding, and it's only for like parts of the song. So like they'll have some mid growls for like a line or two, and then some pitch shift vocals for a line or two, and they'll switch off, and it works well. Definitely like early Carcass influence here, which is super cool. And then there's some like just nasty riffs, and I will say on this track especially, the vocals are a little too high in the mix, I think. It feels like I'm hearing more of the vocals than I probably should be, but it's not a huge issue. Next track is Writhing Fetal Remains, which features just up-tempo riffs like all over the place. It's Riff City, and I'm not saying that as a joke. It's actually Riff City. There's some chunky riffs with pinch harmonics, and then there's a guitar lead with like a crushing underbelly underneath towards the end of the track. It's just great. There's one of the few like leads on this album, and it works out pretty well. The title track comes on, Decayed Butchery, and it starts off with just like a fucking lightning blast. And then it builds up into just like neck-breaking riff. Then it transitions into like a brutal death metal like breakdown with some guttural vocals and stuff. Then the blast comes back afterwards into just a half note riff, which works really well. And on this track especially, the drumming really just takes it away. Like it's really the star of the show on this track, I think. The next track is Post-Traumatic Mutilation, which has some awesome fast half note riffs over blast beats with awesome high vocals as well from Will, and as well as the previous track, the drumming here is exceptional. It really stands out as like just awesome stuff. And then there's a crushing breakdown towards the end where both Colin and Will do their vocals at the same time, and the duo vocals just sound, it's great. Then the final track is Brutalized, which has a fun guitar lead that leads into a heavy gallop with some intermittent blasts. There's some fast chugs that will give way to a neck-breaking riff, and then an even heavier half-note riff comes on afterwards. It's like, it just like starts off like you think it's the breakdown, and then they fucking go even slower. Then it builds up with some more fast chugs, and then even more awesome half-note riffs. Like this song is just like all over the place, but in a great way. It's so good. Tempo changes all over the place, and it really serves as just a great climactic closer for this album. And overall, like, I'm left just like, damn, that's good shit. So overall, it's a fairly short LP at 27 minutes, which is shorter than Rain and Blood. But everything here is like very quality. Each track stands out on its own with its own unique quality, and none of the tracks really blend together at all. As an album, it flows well too, with a energetic beginning and then this like crushing death doom slow middle part, and then it builds up into like a chaotic climax towards the end. Unlike many new death metal bands, these kiddos are drawing their inspiration from Exhumed and early Carcass, and it really shows. But despite that, they don't seem derivative at all. They don't overdo it. They don't like play close to the chest and just play and just like worship their inspiration. They're doing their own thing, and they're blending a whole bunch of different stuff, and it works great. They really bring a refreshingly new quality to that kind of style. I didn't give their EP a quantitative score. I didn't give it a number score because I knew that was only a taste of what we were going to hear from them. And this is that realization. I genuinely think that these kids are on par with many of the prominent old school death metal revival bands. That's why I'm giving Wretched Inferno's Decayed Butchery a 4 out of 5.